Hello and welcome to another video review. This is Red Orchestra 2 Heroes of Stalingrad for PC. This review is coming to you courtesy of Dave the Grave. He sent me this, so thank you. It is greatly appreciated. This is the follow-up to Red Orchestra Ostfront 41-45. It was developed by Tripwire Interactive and published in 2011 for PC. And it's interesting in that it's not a lot like the original game. It takes a lot of what the original did and just expands upon it, makes things more realistic, so to speak, and some things that weren't as realistic, but anyway. And recently, they released the Game of the Year edition, which included a pretty large update that added in some content as well as a lot of bug fixes and such like that. That's one thing to note about this game. When it was released, it was really, really buggy, to the point where it was barely playable. And so that's something to keep in mind. I mean, it did get favorable reviews at the time, but it's gotten a lot better in the bug department since then. But the question becomes, is it a good game? Is it a good follow-up to Red Orchestra? Because, I mean, Red Orchestra rocked. So, does Red Orchestra 2 rock? Well, in terms of presentation, it's certainly impressive. The modeling is nice and realistic, very well detailed. The animations are nice and smooth for the most part. There are a few here and there that just look a little bit weird. Nothing too crazy, though. But it's interesting to note that in the first person, you have a lot more free movement now in terms of your aiming. So instead of just looking around like you did in Red Orchestra 1, where your arms would move a little bit, now your arms move a lot more. And when you actually aim down your sights, you can still keep moving your arms anyway. So it adds an element of realism to the gameplay that wasn't exactly in the original game. You'll also react to a lot more. You can take cover now, so you can actually get cover animations and such like that, all of which actually works out pretty well. Then, of course, you have the textures, which, while they are very ugly because they're going for this brown and gray and realistic look, so everything's pretty much a different shade of brown or gray. Very unimpressive to look at. But the quality of those textures is really high, so they did pack a lot of detail into them. It's just in terms of colors, they are very unimpressive. And they actually kind of look a little washed out. And when you combine that with the sometimes little over-the-top shaders where everything kind of shines a little bit, it sometimes makes the visuals look a little bit cheesier than they should. But for the most part, this actually looks very realistic. It looks very nice in terms of high-quality work. As far as being appealing to the eye goes, no, it's not appealing at all. Like I said, it's a realistic-looking game. It's not supposed to look appealing to the eye. But still, they could have done more color in this thing and still gotten away with it being realistic. I don't know why people seem to assume that when you go realistic, it must be brown and gray and nothing else. It just kind of bothers me. As far as sound design goes, it's awesome. The weapon sounds in particular are very realistic. They're very nice and beefy. When you're firing a gun in this game, it sounds like you're firing something that is capable of annihilating people. And it is. So, you have very nice sound effects with this thing. Voice acting is surprisingly good. When it first came out, they actually had to where everybody spoke English. And it was kind of weird. I mean, the Germans, for instance, spoke English with a German accent. And the Russians spoke it with a Russian accent. So it was just weird. And recently, they added in that the ability to switch over entirely to the languages that they're supposed to be speaking. So the Germans can now speak German, and the Russians can now speak Russian. And it's, as far as I can tell, it's correct stuff. As far as the German goes, it's pretty easy to tell. A lot of that's very correct. It's fun to hear them sit there and scream insults at each other constantly. It actually sounds pretty realistic in the battle chatter aspect, and that's very nice. The voices themselves don't sound too ridiculously over the top. I mean, it is warfare, it's World War II, it's the Russian front, everything's going to be kind of overblown to begin with, because, well, the Russian front was crazy in World War II. But, they did a good job of making everything sound just right in this particular game. And then you have the music itself. Sam Hulick actually did the music for this thing, and if you don't know who that is, he worked on the soundtrack for Mass Effect. So, if you've heard stuff from Mass Effect, you know who Sam Hulick is, and he actually did the music for this one. It's good music, but I liked the theme to Red Orchestra 1 better than I liked the one in this one. Not a big deal, but it does fit a little bit better in the original. One thing I don't like about the music in this thing is that it plays a lot more. And it kind of interrupts you. So it might be a good idea to turn the music down a little bit, because otherwise it's going to be blaring in your ear half the time. But what really matters is the gameplay, because the story is little more than setup. It's World War II, it's the Russian front, it's the Battle of Stalingrad. Those are your 3 plot points. That's all you need to know. When you actually play through the 2 campaigns in this thing, you start with the German campaign, upon completion of which you will actually unlock the Russian campaign. But between missions, it'll give you a little briefing kind of thing that tells you why you're attacking that point, but that's kinda it. There's nothing really tying the story together. In fact, there isn't a story. It's just missions that are interconnected by the fact that it's the Battle of Stalingrad. So, don't go into this thing expecting any kind of storyline from the campaign. In fact, it would be much better if they just reinstituted the practice mode from the original Red Orchestra, because the campaigns in this game are terrible. I've already ranted about this in my Games That Infuriate Me to no end on it, but the single player is full of massive issues, like the AI being completely stupid. The lower 2 difficulty settings, there are only 4 difficulties in this game, the lowest 2 of which are actually arcade mode, which is basically Call of Duty, and the 2 highest of which are actually Red Orchestra. But even then, it doesn't matter what you set it to. The AI is going to be stupid anyway. It will respawn you as random classes, and it will just randomly pick them. So they could be right in the middle of a firefight, and all of a sudden, you just pop into this character who happens to be a machine gunner and is out of ammo. Happens all the time. It's incredibly annoying when that happens too. So, it does a bad job of telling you how to play the game as well. It does give you tutorial segments which do teach you how to use things, but when you actually go in to use them in the campaign itself and the missions that follow, which is basically like, okay, you've done the tutorial, now go in and practice. Well, when you actually play through it, it's a lot easier said than done. When you actually go online, however, that's where you'll notice all of the stuff actually comes together. Because people are not anywhere near as stupid as the bots in this game. So, you have 3 modes of play in this thing. Arcade mode, which I've already said is basically Call of Duty. It is terrible. Do not even bother playing it. I don't even know why they put it in Red Orchestra other than to get people over who aren't used to playing Red Orchestra or playing realistic games. You have Classic mode, which is a lot like the original Red Orchestra. It removes a lot of the new content that was in Red Orchestra 2. Stuff like the leveling system for the classes, which I'll get to in a minute. And then you have Realistic mode, which is your normal Red Orchestra 2 gameplay. Now, things that have changed from Red Orchestra 1. When you go to aim down your sights, it no longer centers the weapon. You go to aim down your sights, and they still have free aim, which is actually really nice, to be honest with you. I really like the free aim system in this game. It was massively improved over the original game. And it's pretty intuitive, actually. Another thing that you can do now is you can zoom in. You have a focus mode where it's basically if you'll hold your breath for a moment and it'll steady your next shot, but you can't hold the breath for too long, otherwise you'll miss. But you can hold the button down and you'll keep zoomed in. That makes long-range shots more accurate. Well, I should say easier to take. You can adjust your sights now, both the scope and the iron sights, to compensate for distance, because there's bullet drop in this game. I've never really bothered with upping or downing my sights, but well, adjusting my sights, I should just say, because I always have a hard time actually hitting anything when I do. So I just compensate by adjusting my own aim, and that usually works out pretty well. You can switch between different sights. If you have a scope on your rifle, you can actually switch between the scope and iron sights on that rifle. Really handy for close-range encounters, especially if you don't have a pistol available to you. You have to unlock things in Red Orchestra 2 now. first off with your pistols, and then you can also unlock different upgrades for your weapons as you go along, as you level your weapons up. Here's the problem. Leveling things up, both class-wise, because you have to do every single class individually, as well as weapons, takes forever. I mean, the way it comes out in the game is you have to have a rifle level of 25 to have a bayonet on it. Yeah, level 25 on your rifle. It starts at 1. And each level up takes basically 25 kills, so it takes forever to get this thing leveled up to get a bayonet. And then, of course, you have to level up your classes, too, which takes even longer. Just because the XP rate you get for that is just really slow. Don't worry about it, though. It doesn't unbalance the game. It gives you slight edges over your opponents. Like, it'll give you a pistol, for instance, which is really handy when you run out of ammo and you have to suddenly drop your rifle and pull out your pistol. Because if you try to melee the enemy to death, you have to do a full charge to take them down in one hit. What a full charge is, you hold the melee button down until you've basically charged up your melee attack, and you have to sprint at your enemy in order to actually hit them at full force, and that will take them down instantly. So they've changed that up from the original Red Orchestra. That's something they've thrown in there. They've thrown in a first-person cover system now, which actually works pretty well, to be honest with you. You go up to a wall or some piece of cover, and you press the button to... it's the use button, basically, and you will take cover. And you can actually, when you go to aim down your sights, you'll peek up over the cover or around the cover or whatever, and it'll make you a little bit harder to hit than you would be, say, just standing there and peeking out. So that's greatly appreciated. You can still lean, by the way, if you want to. So you can still do that if you don't want to use the cover system. I've found the cover system to be pretty intuitive, actually, for the most part. Vaulting over cover is a little bit tricky sometimes. Sometimes it glitches out a little bit. And in general, the game is actually pretty buggy, even today, even though they've patched it many, many times. One issue that I have a lot is micro-stuttering. It just constantly stutters, especially when I'm sprinting. And I don't know why. I can't figure out any reason why it would do that. But I can tell you this, it's really annoying. Apart from that, I've noticed performance problems. I'm running this on high detail settings, and I can actually run it on the highest, but the stuttering gets a lot worse. So it's weird. And a friend of mine who has a much beefier PC than I do, he still gets the stuttering problems, so I'm not alone there. I've noticed lag issues, but that may just be the servers I've been on. There's not a humongous player base for this thing, which is a little bit depressing, but I can kind of understand it. It is a tactical shooter. It is kind of a niche genre. And once you unlock things in this game, I imagine it's pretty wimpy when you're trying to go through and you don't have as much gold to play through anymore. The balancing for the maps is a little bit off. There's a couple maps that are really biased to one side or the other. And, like, namely apartments, for instance, it's really biased toward the defenders. If you're attacking on that map, then you're pretty much doomed, unless you have a good team. So, there's a few issues there. I've never really used the commander stuff in this game, nor have I been able to use vehicles. Actually, I believe they disabled vehicles online because there was something broken about them. But I've never actually been able to use them online. In the single player, they weren't that impressive. You can switch between the different positions in the tank, and you can look out the different viewports and everything. It's actually really well designed, but it seems a little bit wonky in terms of actually playing through it. I mean, it is a tank. It doesn't handle well, obviously, but it just doesn't feel quite right for tank mechanics, even in a realistic setting. So maybe they did something there that just bugged it out, and I'm experiencing the bugs there or something. I know they've disabled them online, so at least as I'm recording this, so that's kind of an issue. But it's kind of interesting to look at this game and see how different it is from Red Orchestra 1, because they've added in so many different things. You can do press checks now, for instance. That's what I mean by that is you have to hold the reload button down, and you'll actually check how much ammo you have, as opposed to having some sort of counter or anything. and the addition of that cover system, as well as the other mechanics that I've gone over, and the unlock system, makes it a very different game from Red Orchestra 1, but it remains true to what the original set forth in that it is a very realistic game, where basically 1 or 2 shots is going to kill you. You can also bandage yourself, by the way, if you start bleeding out. You can start bleeding out in this game, too. But it's interesting to play through this thing and note how different it is from Red Orchestra 1, and yet how, at the same time, it's so much the same. They kept so much that was in the original, and they didn't really butcher it. They just expanded upon it. They improved upon it. But at the same time, they made a game that's barely playable because of the bugs, because of the lag, and all sorts of issues with that. They made a game where the unlock system is pretty much punishing to new players, and it takes you absolutely forever to actually earn any unlocks. So, ultimately, Red Orchestra 2 just isn't as fun as the original, even though it is technically a better game. That's why it gets a 3 out of 5. Thanks for watching.